I don't need charity, she spat, rifle wavering. Charity. He hadn't spoken a civil word in months. Neighborly sense, he'd meant. The coming storm would shred her flimsy canvas. Her eyes narrowed. What's your price, neighbor? That's when he saw it. A flicker of something so profoundly lonely it mirrored his own dead soul. He just wanted to work. Days bled into weeks. Whispers turned to stares, until the self-righteous town council took notice. Their judgment like a noose. They have no idea. Her quiet kindness, that stubborn hope, it'll burn their whole damn world down. I don't need charity, she spat, rifle wavering. Charity? He hadn't spoken a civil word in months. Neighborly sense, he'd meant. The coming storm would shred her flimsy canvas. Her eyes narrowed. What's your price, neighbor? That's when he saw it. A flicker of something so profoundly lonely, it mirrored his own dead soul. He just wanted to work. Days bled into weeks. Whispers turned to stares, until the self-righteous town council took notice. Their judgment like a noose. They have no idea. Her quiet kindness, that stubborn hope, it'll burn their whole damn world down. He'd first spotted her from the ridge overlooking Willow Creek, a lone figure battling the unforgiving Montana landscape. She wrestled a massive log, its weight threatening to topple her with each step. Her threadbare coat offered little protection against the biting November wind. Jacob Hartwell found himself drawn to her struggle, a familiar ache rekindling in his chest. It was an echo of a dream he'd abandoned, a ghost of a life he'd failed to build. Each morning he returned to his vantage point, a silent observer. He watched her hands, raw and calloused, skillfully shape the rough-hewn timber. Sawdust danced in the frosty air as she notched the logs, fitting them together with unwavering determination. No neighbors offered assistance. No friendly faces broke the desolate scene. Just her, the skeletal frame of a cabin, and the vast, indifferent sky. The sight was a painful reminder. He and Margaret had planned to build their own home, a sanctuary against the world. They'd spent hours poring over blueprints, their laughter echoing in the cozy warmth of their hearth. But the fever had stolen Margaret, along with their unborn child, leaving Jacob adrift in a sea of grief and regret. The woman, Sarah Brennan, was a whisper on the wind. Jacob knew the townsfolk's disdain. Sarah Brennan, building a cabin all alone? What kind of woman? He watched her pause, rubbing life back into her numb fingers, her face momentarily illuminated by the small fire. Young, yes, but weathered, etched with a resilience that resonated deep within him. He recognized that stubborn defiance. He'd seen it in the mirror before grief had consumed him, leaving him a hollow shell. Why was she alone? The question pulsed within him, an insistent drumbeat against the silence of his own life. Women didn't carve out existence single-handed in this harsh land. Something had driven her here, some desperate need or devastating loss. His horse shifted beneath him, impatient. Jacob tightened the reins, caught in a silent battle. Should he ride down, offer a hand, or turn away, retreat to the numb safety of his isolation? Margaret's memory loomed large, a barrier between him and any possibility of connection. Watching this woman felt like a betrayal, a desecration of the love he'd lost. But tomorrow he knew he'd be back. His visits to the ridge had become a ritual, a fragile thread connecting him to a world he'd thought he'd left behind. Then one morning, Sarah looked up, her gaze locked onto his across the expanse of windswept grassland. A jolt, as intense as a lightning strike, passed between them. For a long, breathless moment, neither moved, suspended in a silent acknowledgement. Then with a sharp tug on the reins, Jacob spurred his horse back into the shadows of the pines. He vanished, leaving Sarah alone once more. But as she returned to her work, her hands trembled slightly as she hoisted the next log. 3 days later, the storm descended with savage fury. Sarah fought a losing battle against the elements, hammering canvas over the exposed walls as the first flakes of snow began to fall. The wind howled, ripping at the makeshift barriers. Panic clawed at her throat. Suddenly, the thud of hooves broke through the storm's roar. She spun around, reaching for the rifle propped against the cabin frame. A figure emerged from the swirling white curtain, the watcher from the ridge. He led a pack horse laden with supplies, nails, rope, heavy canvas, dried beef wrapped in burlap. He dismounted without a word and began unloading. Sarah raised the rifle, her knuckles white against the cold steel. I don't need charity. Build. Watching from that ridge. Because maybe I'm only good at watching. Sarah turned to face him, then stop watching and start living. The words hung between them like a dare. Jacob looked at her, really looked, and saw someone as broken and brave as himself. He kissed her, tentative, terrified, real. Sarah froze for a heartbeat, then returned it. The cabin around them was unfinished, wind howling through gaps, but warmth existed here beyond the stove. When they pulled apart, neither spoke. They didn't need to. Morning came clear and bright. The storm had passed. They worked differently now, synchronized, aware of each other in new ways, careful not to name what had shifted. At noon, Moses arrived on horseback checking on Jacob. His knowing look said everything. Boss Town's talking. Clara Whitfield's got her claws out. Jacob's stomach sank. His horse had been spotted at Sarah's property overnight. Innocent explanations wouldn't matter to people hungry for scandal. Let them talk, Sarah said firmly, but Jacob's silence spoke louder than her defiance. The town council convened publicly 1 week later, unusual, theatrical, orchestrated by Clara Whitfield. Jacob stood in the town square, surrounded by familiar faces, now cold with judgment. Rancher Vernon Nash stood beside Clara, smirking. He'd wanted Sarah's land since Ben died. Clara's voice rang clear. We're concerned, Jacob, about your association with certain individuals. This community has standards. Sarah Brennan is a respectable widow, Jacob said, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm helping a neighbor. Helping, Vernon Nash laughed. Is that what we're calling it? Jacob felt the weight of 2 years' respectability pressing down his position, his reputation, the town's approval he'd never questioned. He hesitated, searching for stronger words. And in that hesitation, everything crumbled. Sarah stood 30 feet away, half hidden by the mercantile doorway. She'd come to town for supplies and heard everything. She heard him choose their approval over defending her. Without a word, she mounted her horse and rode away. Jacob saw her go, recognized his failure, and felt something die inside him, something that had just started to live again. He tried to follow. Sarah refused to see him. You chose their approval, she said through the cabin door, voice flat. I chose myself. We're done. Jacob, leave. That afternoon, Vernon Nash filed a legal claim against Sarah's property, citing incomplete residence and Ben's unpaid debts. The deadline, finish the cabin and prove occupancy in 2 weeks or lose the land. At his ranch, Jacob sat alone with a whiskey bottle. Moses watched from across the room. You spent 2 years dead, boss, the old foreman said quietly. She woke you up. Now you're choosing the grave again. Jacob didn't answer. He had no answer. 10 days passed. Sarah worked alone, injured from a saw slip. Cabin still incomplete. Exhaustion carved shadows under her eyes. The dream of home was slipping through her fingers. Jacob spiraled. Work, whiskey, isolation. His ranch thrived. He felt nothing. Moses tried again over breakfast. Margaret would be ashamed of you right now. Not for moving on, for giving up. The words landed like a blow. That afternoon, Jacob rode to the cemetery. He stood at Margaret's headstone, snow falling around him, and spoke aloud the truth he'd avoided. I loved you, Maggie. I'll always love you. His voice broke. But I'm still alive, and I've been choosing wrong, choosing fear, choosing death. He touched the cold stone. She makes me feel alive, and I think you'd want that for me. Permission granted to himself from himself. Honoring Margaret meant living fully, not dying slowly. Jacob rode straight to town. He found the council in the saloon and slammed Vernon's fraudulent papers on the bar. This claim is built on lies, Jacob said loud enough for everyone to hear. Ben Brennan's debts were paid. I have the receipts. Vernon wants her land, not justice. Clara Whitfield rose. This isn't about land, it's about cruelty, Jacob interrupted. Dressed up as righteousness. Sarah Brennan is worth 10 of you. Clara. She's braver, kinder, stronger than anyone in this room. He looked around at familiar faces. You want to judge her? Judge me alongside her. I stand with Sarah Brennan. The room divided before his eyes. Clara's faction remained hostile. But others, younger families, the blacksmith, several ranchers shifted. Respect for courage outweighed appetite for scandal. Moses stepped forward. I'll help finish that cabin. Me too, said the blacksmith. Others joined. At dawn, Jacob led a dozen men to Willow Creek. Sarah met them, rifle ready, confused. Jacob dismounted and met her eyes. I was a coward. I'm here now. All of us. Let us help you build. Sarah looked at him, at the men behind him, weighing trust against fear. Finally, she nodded once. Then pick up a hammer. 3 days of hard work transformed Willow Creek. The community that showed up wasn't the whole town, but it was the better half. Walls rose in coordinated effort, roof secured, door hung, floor laid. The cabin became real, solid, sturdy home. Laughter rang out. Shared meals, collective pride, Western communal spirit reclaimed from judgment. Sarah and Jacob worked side by side. Few words, but constant awareness. Trust, rebuilding through action, one log at a time. On the third afternoon, Vernon Nash arrived with 4 hired men. He carried papers and wore a gun. This property's under dispute, Vernon announced. You're all trespassing. The work stopped. Men reached for tools that could become weapons. Jacob stepped forward, Moses beside him. The only trespasser here is you, Vernon. Vernon's hand moved toward his gun. Tension peaked, violence one heartbeat away. Sarah walked through the line of defenders, deed in hand, and faced Vernon directly. This is my home, she said, voice steady as stone. I'm not leaving, and you're trespassing. The completed cabin stood behind her. Proof of residence, proof of community, proof of will, stronger than greed. The sheriff, who'd been watching from his horse, finally spoke. She's right. Vernon Council reviewed your claim yesterday. Denied. You've got no business here. Vernon looked at the unified faces around him and saw he'd lost. He mounted his horse, face twisted with humiliation. This isn't over, he muttered. Yes, Jacob said quietly. It is. Vernon rode away. The helpers departed as evening fell, leaving Sarah and Jacob alone in the completed cabin. Lantern light warmed the log walls. The small space felt enormous with possibility. I don't know how to do this, Jacob said. I'm still scared. So am I, Sarah replied. But we build it one day at a time, like the cabin. He took her hand. She didn't pull away. They stood in their completed work, not just timber and nails, but trust and second chances made tangible. Jacob pulled her close and kissed her. No hesitation this time, no fear. Outside, the first stars appeared. Inside, a home began. Spring arrived like a promise kept. Sarah stood at the cabin door at dawn, coffee cup warming her hands. 3 months had passed. The cabin had evolved. Small garden planted, corral built for Jacob's horse, curtains in the windows, signs of 2 lives merging into one. Moses and the ranch hands came for Sunday supper, now found family forming around the couple. Laughter replacing the silence that had defined Jacob's life for so long. That morning they walked to church together. Sarah's hand in Jacob's, both ready to face whatever came. Some glares remained. Clara's faction, smaller now, bitter but irrelevant. Younger families greeted them warmly. The town was learning. Acceptance wasn't complete, but it was growing. After the service, they rode back to Willow Creek in comfortable quiet. On the porch that evening, they talked of the future, expanding the cabin, adding a room. Maybe children someday, building forward, not just surviving. You ever regret it? Jacob asked. The hard way? Sarah smiled. Every good thing worth having comes the hard way. She watched him work the corral in the fading light. He looked up, caught her watching, and smiled. Rare, genuine, the smile of a man who'd learned to live again. She smiled back. The cabin stood solid against the Montana sky. Wildflowers bloomed where winter frost had ruled. Smoke rose from the chimney, carrying the scent of home into the evening air. She had built her cabin one log at a time, each piece laid with stubborn hope against a world that wanted her to fail. He had built his courage the same way, one choice at a time, until fear became just another ghost to lay to rest. Together they built a home, not from timber and nails alone, but from the harder materials, trust earned through action, second chances given and taken, and the quiet belief that even broken hearts can learn to beat again. Spring rain began, soft, renewing. They stood together in the doorway, watching the land come alive. Home. Word count 3.